I could pause it for a second.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Oh, it's already live streamed. Okay. All right, everyone. As folks settle in, we're going to get started with our conversation about student loan forgiveness. So, we're going to give folks a minute to join us so that we can go ahead and welcome our folks on Facebook Live. And we will get started in just a moment. Thank you so much for everybody who has joined us. And for those who are watching on our stream, and who will be watching on our on demand when this is available on our feed. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to get started in just a moment, but some things to highlight. You are able to you are able to utilize the Q&A section for your questions, and we will get to that section later in the program. We will then have an opportunity for you all to get some information from Brian after the program is wrapped up. So we are so excited that you are here. We're going to give folks another minute to join, but really excited to have you all join us. My name is Jenny Castillo, and I am the Regional Engagement Director for the Southern Economic Advancement Project, also known as SEAP. We at SEAP are very excited to have conversations such as this. As we were launched in 2019, we partner with policy thinkers and doers to amplify efforts and bridge gaps in policy infrastructure. And our goal is to advance policies that improve economic security, climate, and health across 12 Southern states. We are here today to talk about the student loan forgiveness and what that looks like with the new rules that are coming down from the federal side. On the screen, you'll see my colleague, Dee Dee Dunham, our communications manager, and Brian Stone, who is joining us today for this very important conversation. Brian serves as a policy analyst for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and he previously worked as a program manager for a DC area financial education nonprofit. Today's conversation will be focused on what's happening with student loans and how we're able to get that relief. Brian, I'm going to share the mic with you now so that you can
Okay.
start the presentation. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to have this conversation about student loans. As you all know, there is a lot happening in the federal space. And so, yeah, so we can have a discussion. We'll go through the deck and then take any questions and answers. But if you have anything that pops up, feel free to drop it in the chat and we'll definitely get around to it. So, but yeah, without further ado, yeah, it's me again, Brian Stones. I'm a policy analyst in the section for students and young consumers at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And so you may or may not know about our agency. We're a relatively new government agency, being that we're only 12 years old. But we've been tasked by Congress with regulating consumer financial markets. And so essentially that's what we do. So anything you can think about like mortgage lending, any type of bank lending, our agency has authority over it. But we also have our enforcement side and we have our education side, and I'm on the education side. So, but before I get started, I'll read our standard disclaimer. So this presentation is being made by a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau representative. It does not constitute legal interpretation, guidance, or advice of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I need to tweet that. Any opinions or views stated by the presenter are the presenter's own and may not represent the agency's views. This document is being used in support of a live discussion. As such, it does not necessarily express the entirety of that discussion or the relative emphasis of topics therein. And so we'll talk about student loan repayment, and we'll cut and get to the point, which I know that everyone has questions about, student debt forgiveness. And so I'll tell you what we can talk about and what I can't talk about. And the short answer is just because I'm sort of finding these things out like you, so via the news. And so student debt forgiveness, essentially the president came out with the student debt forgiveness plan in late August. And so essentially what that does is entitles families who make below a certain amount or single individuals to qualify for student loan forgiveness for federal student loans. But there have been some tweaks and changes that have happened over the last couple of weeks since the plan was announced, including up until this weekend. And so as the White House has recommended, and the Department of Education has said the student debt forgiveness plan, as the president has laid it out, is still moving forward. And so we've encouraged anyone who thinks they qualify to complete the application, which only takes about maybe a minute or 2 minutes. And you'll get an email notification like letting you know that your application was successfully submitted. And so you can find that on the Department of Education's website. But as far as any pending legal litigation that's currently happening around student debt relief, yeah, we won't discuss that today. And so the student debt forgiveness plan as it is laid out. And so you can either qualify for up to $20,000 in relief or $10,000. And so $20,000 would be for those individuals who were Pell eligible and received the Pell Grant while they were undergrad, and $10,000 essentially if you did not receive the Pell Grant. And so forgiveness applies to single individuals earning less than $125,000 a year, and that's based on your either 2020 or 2021 taxes, or for married couples who earn less than $250,000. And also as a part of the student debt plan, interest is still being held and not charged essentially on your student loans until December 31st of this year. And I will move to the next page. And this is essentially what we talked about, but it's always good to see it more than once. So yeah, so $20,000 in debt cancellation if you receive the Pell Grant, and $10,000 if you didn't receive the Pell Grant. And just remember the income qualifications. And as I said, the application is live, it's open, and you should definitely apply. Even if you think you may not qualify, it couldn't hurt. It only takes, again, a few minutes. And so I would definitely encourage anyone who thinks they're eligible to apply. And if you have a friend or family member who may be eligible, encourage them to apply too. So something important to remember, anytime there are any announcements on a federal level around essentially anything, but especially student loans, unfortunately, unscrupulous players sort of pop out and scams start to arise. And so you'll may see a letter, or you may get a call or someone saying like, oh, I will complete your application for you, or there's a fee associated with it. And we know that that's not correct. And so the Federal Trade Commission has created like a website, an actual blog that talks about some of the tactics that scammers take, and it's things to be aware of. Like, we know that anytime you're doing anything around federal student loans, it is free. So there's no charge to submit an application. There's no charge to fill out the FAFSA. There's no charge for the debt forgiveness application. And if you click it and see it, it requires like some very quick information, your name, social security number, and a few other points of data. And then you just hit submit, and that's it. You get an email letting you know that your application has been received. So again, there's no need to pay anyone. If someone tells you that, it's false, and it's definitely a scam. And I think the Federal Trade Commission does a very good job of being blunt and saying that if someone tells you to do this, it's definitely a scam. So, but yeah, you can check out that blog and get some more information. But then we'll talk about student loans and how they work. So kind of like how we got here. If you're managing student loans or thinking about paying for someone else's education or paying for your own education, some of the options that are available to you. And so on Federal Student Aid's website, there is a loan simulator. And so what this allows you to do, and so sort of separate from the forgiveness conversation, you can plug and play with numbers. Like if you have student loans and you're trying to understand which repayment plan may be best for you, you can plug in those numbers, get a sense of the different repayment plans, the monthly amount you may have to pay, and then if there's any sort of forgiveness associated with it. It's like you work whatever the standard plan is. And I will say also, this is a different conversation from public service loan forgiveness. So there's public service loan forgiveness, there's broad-based student loan forgiveness, and then there's forgiveness that could be associated with the payment plan that you pay. So, but yeah, so student loans. So anyone who's taken out student loans, this may look familiar. And so each year, or you may have taken out 1 year, but for this example, this person has taken out student loans, both subsidized and unsubsidized, all 4 years of college. And the subsidized student loans essentially mean that the government pays the interest on the loan, and so it doesn't accrue while you're actually in school. And the unsubsidized loans are unsubsidized, so the loan and interest builds up over the term of the loan after you take it out. But you'll notice that amongst the interest rates, so they're all different. And so that's just because they're set each year in June and July 1st, when those loans are actually taken out for whatever school year that may be. The interest rates actually change. So that's the short version of saying, because I know this can be a complicated topic and I want to make it as easy and palatable as possible, because we get a lot of questions around student loans at CFPB, and subsidized and unsubsidized is probably at the top. So I do not want to complicate. But let's say this person also consolidates their loans. And so you see at the bottom, they borrowed in total about $27,000. And their average interest rate, let's say consolidating loans means that they're taking these 8 different loans and they combine it into one. And so the new interest rate is just an average of all the interest rates that are taken out over that 4-year period. And then we take a dive into interest. And so if this person paid on a standard repayment plan, which is essentially 10 years, 120 payments, they would have accrued about $6,000 in interest and paid back a total of $33,000, a little over $33,000. And so what can happen, I think a very important slide that based on your income, so you want to make sure that your payment, whatever that payment may be, is actually covering your principal and covering interest. And this is why. So this person, let's say they had a reduction in income. Long story short, once they were able to plug in their actual income and select a repayment plan, the payment that it kicked out was say $50 a month, but you'll notice that the interest charges for the loan is $93 and the principal is $43. So essentially their payment is not covering the interest and principal. So they paid for 12 months and the loan balance is actually increased. And I know that can become overwhelming, especially when you're in a situation, and some individuals may have paid like years. So they paid the last, 10 years or 12 years or 15. And then only to find out, so I've been making those payments and, the loans actually increase. So it can become very frustrating and defeating. And so, feel like a defeat, but we have a solution. So again, it's very important. And so this happens because essentially the interest of the loan accrues. There are different points where the interest is actually capitalized. So the principal and the interest combine, and then that new loan begins to accrue interest. And so it's just something important to remember. And before you make any changes to your student loans, and this is separate from, again, the conversation that's happening now as far as interest being on hold until December 31st, but you change your repayment plan, it's just a couple questions you want to ask, like will it cause capitalization? So essentially, will it cause that interest amount to be added into your principal, and then that new amount begins to earn interest? And so deferment and forbearance, and so forbearance that we're currently in, this is not the case. So your loans, so first loans are not accruing any interest, and there will be no capitalization as a result of the CARES Act forbearance. So I just want to make that clear. And then when you switch to different repayment plans, it could cause capitalization. So just a question to ask a servicer when you're speaking with them or considering making a change: will it cause my loan? Will this cause capitalization? So, and then when you're thinking about consolidating or refinancing, so consolidating federal student loans, which is what I spoke about before, taking those loans, and it could be 1 loan, 2 loans. Well, you need at least 2. So 2 loans or more, and you're actually consolidating them. So you're creating a new loan and bringing them together, and essentially that allows you to, receive a new payment, which your payment, it may be easier to manage versus like having 8 different loans you're making payments on, but having that one payment, which is usually lower than the, the combination of those 8 different payments. And your interest rate may increase slightly, and that's just because, again, it's the average of all of the loans that you're combining. And so something very important to remember, and it has especially come up a lot now during the forgiveness conversation. So refinancing, if you refinance a federal loan to a private loan, then you lose those federal protections. So the things that we're talking about now, like the interest pause, which has been a little over 2 years, and some of the forgiveness topics that have come up wouldn't apply if you had a federal student loan and then you transition that loan to a private loan, because it's now private loan, and so you lose, again, all those opportunities and benefits of having a federal loan. So, but if you already have a private loan and you're thinking about refinancing, you want to understand what the new interest rate, like what impact that may have on your actual loan payment. Will it extend your payoff date, and then the total cost? And so not just the payment, so it may be like a $100 payment, but it may actually extend the time you have to make the payment, so you end up paying more. So definitely ask about that, and also ask about fees. Okay, and if you run into problems, and so this does happen from time to time. So the first line of defense, the person you want to reach out to or company is your loan servicer. And so those are the people who manage your loan for the federal government. And so you may receive emails, mail, all different types of notifications about your loan. So you contact them and they should be in a position where they can assist you. If the student's in school, a financial aid office, reputable nonprofits. And so, as I mentioned, I worked for one, and all of our services are free. But definitely do your vetting, and then state and federal government agencies who also assist around student loans. And it's not in there explicitly, but the Department of Education. So if you have a question, even if you don't go directly to the service that the Department of Education is, you can call, you can email, always a good resource, because that's who ultimately holds the loan. And then you want to run the numbers. So you want to understand any penalties, fees, additional costs. Of course, capitalization pops out again, the monthly payment, your total amount to be paid, and then your payoff date. So it's very important. And so you don't want to pay any debt relief services, because these things as I said, are free, and they're charging you essentially for something you can do yourself. And if you have a student loan, you can take that money and potentially put it on the loan, or I'm pretty sure you can think of a lot of ways to spend your money besides paying someone to do a service for you that's free. And then you don't, and it happens sometimes, it pops up, but going to school to defer your student loans, and if you're going to school anyways, that's perfectly fine. But it essentially causes a situation where, those loans are still there, they're still accumulating interest. And so when you graduate, or, the grace period ends, whatever program you're in, they're still there and still have to be paid. And then bankruptcy is not a valid, option when you think about student loans, because you can look through the news. There are many cases where people have tried to bankrupt student loans, and they're almost, caveat, because nothing's necessarily impossible, but it's almost impossible to bankrupt student loans. And if you look through, again, the news, people who've tried haven't been successful for the most part. So, and then debt cancellation, but we won't talk about that. So we have spoken about it. It will happen when it's supposed to happen. And so again, just public service announcement, feel free to plug in those applications for student debt forgiveness. It's on the Department of Education's website. If you just Google it, a link should come up. And it takes about 2 seconds. But if you need additional advice on student loans, so we have a page where we've sort of created like a decision tree. So you click your question, and it sort of walks you down through our resources and tools that are on our website. So, just check out that page also. And then if you run into more problems, so it's the type of things that happen. So if a servicer can't explain charges in your statement, they refuse to change a repayment plan, they push deferment of forbearance, which is something that has happened in the past, unfortunately, where let's say a borrower calls in, for whatever reason, the payment's too high, or they can't make their loan payment for a certain period of time. The servicer may say, hey, you can enter deferment or forbearance, and you don't have to make a payment. And what ends up happening is that, again, the loan's still there, still accruing interest. And in some cases, the borrower may have qualified for a $0 payment, which essentially means that you didn't have to actually make a payment, but for like public service loan forgiveness and some of the other forgiveness programs, it essentially counted as one of those payments, one of the 120, which I'll talk about later on. And so borrowers, again, missed out on those opportunities because, the first option that was presented was like deferment of forbearance without thinking about the impact it may have on their ability to get forgiveness. So just keep your eyes open for that. And then your records don't match theirs, especially around public service loan forgiveness and understanding the amount of payments, the correct payments. And so you want that to be accurate, because when it's time to submit the application, it becomes very important. And so where can you go for help? Again, ask to speak to quality control for your servicer. You can file a complaint with the Federal Student Aid Ombudsman. You can also file a complaint with us. And so we have authority, again, over private student loans, but we work very closely with the Department of Education. And essentially what will happen if you filed a complaint with us is that we will reroute it to Department of Education. So, and just remember, your state ombudsman's office or attorney general can also be a good resource. Okay, and so the public service loan forgiveness limited waiver, which it's like perfect time to talk about this because it expires in like a couple of days, so October 31st. So take a step back. So what is public service loan forgiveness? And so for someone who has a qualifying job who makes 120 qualifying payments, so essentially that's 10 years of payments in the correct program. And so and work full time. And so, and full time is considered to be 35 hours or more. And you complete the application, and you can qualify for public service loan forgiveness, meaning that after you make those payments, any remaining amount is eligible for forgiveness. And this is separate again from the broad-based student debt cancellation that we talked about earlier. And so what loans qualify? And so this comes up a lot, and there was a lot of issues back and forth, just confusion in general around which loans qualify, but only direct loans qualify. And those are loans that are made after 2010. And so before that, there was a different student loan program. It was the FFEL program, the Federal Family Education Loan Program, FFEL, we'll call it for now. But essentially, so students who, and that was around the time I went to college, so the loans that were taken out then were, they were federal student loans, but essentially they were held by private lenders. And so it was a federal student loan, but your lender may be the Bank of X or, you know, a different company. And so, and you didn't necessarily see the Department of Education as your lender. And so most of those loans now, if they haven't been paid off, they, some have been sent back to the Department of Education, but actually there's a substantial amount that are still held by those private lenders. And so you can basically get into a situation where you've been paying on those loans and they didn't necessarily qualify for forgiveness. And then people found that out once they actually submitted the application. And so what the waiver essentially allows you to do is to consolidate those loans. And so you're taking those loans and again, you're combining them into a new loan, but that has to be done again by October 31st. And those previous payments that were made, which normally wouldn't have qualified, will then qualify. So that's what the waiver allows you to do. And so there was no extension. And then the waiver opportunity, I guess, happened last October. And so we've had a year, and there is no extension of this waiver that has been publicly released yet. So, so yeah, if you think you may fall into that boat, definitely consider consolidating those older loans into a new one. And so, yeah, as I said, October 31st is the date. And yeah, so no further action is planned after that. So again, if you think you may qualify, it's definitely something to look into and take advantage of. And so as far as accessing your loans, and if you haven't gone to studentaid.gov, it's a wonderful site, great resources, but essentially any federal student loan that you've ever taken out, any grants that you've received. So if you have some questions around if I ever received a Pell grant, not sure, it may have been a long time ago, definitely go to studentaid.gov. And essentially once you log in, as you can see, you'll be able to see your aid summary. So all the loans you ever received. And again, the caveat is these are federal student loans and any federal grants you actually received. And then again, you can, like what type of loans you received, you can see if you ever taken out any plus loans or like grad plus loans or parent plus loan, you can also access that via the FSA's website. And then resources the CFPB has to help you. So we have a podcast, which we talk about all things student money, anything you can think about as far as credit and I guess adulting. You can definitely find that on our podcast. And we have experts that will come on and sort of talk about, and it's more of a conversational type of podcast, which makes it pretty neat also. And I think it's very user friendly, and it has a lot of resources for anyone who may have taken out a student loan, but also people who are considering taking out student loans or, you know, repaying a student loan or all of it. So yes, check out the podcast. And then we have a grad path tool. And so if you know someone or you yourself may be considering going back to school, it's a wonderful tool, and it takes about maybe 15 to 20 minutes to do, but I think what makes it powerful is that it provides insight into any debt that you may be planning to take out, what that debt may look like after you take it out. And I think I can definitely say when I was going to college, there was nothing I think like this, which allowed me to get a sense of like, you know, if I do this particular program at this particular school, my income may be X, and actually it has a running ticker at the top, so you can plug and play. It's really good for students with their actual award letter, so you can plug in those real numbers. But even if you don't have them, you can plug in hypothetical numbers and get a sense of, like I said, the tickers at the top, any surplus I may have, or any debt and unmet need I may have. So and then I think as a student to be able to see like, hey, if I go down this route, I could potentially be on the hook for $500 a month for 10 or 20 years. And if that's something I want to do, and it allows you to, compare apples to apples versus yeah, just sort of going in blind. And then we have our interest rate tool. And so I know there were some questions around mortgages, which is just slightly different from student loans, but I think it's a powerful tool anyway, in that you can click it, use it, and get a sense of different interest rates in your area. And so it covers the entire country. And so we use the District of Columbia, for example, because we're in the district. But yeah, no matter where you are, you can definitely, I would say, if you're considering buying a home, and of course, interest rates are a little bit higher now than they were in the past, but you can use this powerful tool again to get a sense of like what interest rates are looking like in your area. So that's one other resource. And then some of our tools, and I'll show the page where you can actually order these, but we have booklets on any personal finance topics, and you can order these for free. And that's what I wanted to get to, because I think that's like the best part of it. So they're well made. A lot of research and thought has went into like how the information is actually presented. I mean, I use them, I have them like floating around somewhere. But yeah, when I started at the bureau, I was like, oh, this is great. And, reading about credit and debt management, and like I said, in a user-friendly way. So, but you can order these for free. And I think it may be in a slide or two. Yeah, maybe a slide too, but we'll get to it. But any of our resources, again, any PDFs or booklets you may want to share with your audience, you can order it using our Pueblo site, which should be coming up soon. And I'll make it a point to reiterate it again. But yeah, and so we have on our credit score and reports page, and different tools and resources you can also use. And again, anything can be ordered for free. So. And then our Ask CFPB site, which is essentially like a Google One box. And so you can type in a topic or phrase, and it'll crawl our website and pull back everything we have related to that. So it's also a pretty good tool. And then complaints. And so we talked a lot about complaints. And so I think our complaints database is online, and you can check it out and see. And it's not private information, but some of the complaints that's been filed, or maybe against a particular company, and we have a lot of researchers use it. We use it a lot at the Bureau to inform our work. But I would say personally, I filed a few complaints, and I have been successful. So as it says, most companies do reply within 15 days. But at times, and we all know that it's sometimes hard to get through and get the result you actually want or you may deserve. And so when talking to different companies, and so yeah, so any, again, consumer product, it could be student loans, it could be a mortgage, it could be a auto lender. You can definitely, again, file a complaint with us, and we have a whole robust team that works diligently to make sure those complaints are properly handled. And so you can do it online, by mail, or you can actually call in and speak with a live person. So just keep that in mind, because yeah, it's a pretty powerful tool. But as I was saying earlier, to order our resources, and so and we'll make this deck shareable also, but this is the link to our Pueblo site. And so like those booklets I talked about, or any PDFs or anything like that, you can sign up and order them and have them shipped. And so they're shipped in bulk. So that's one thing to know. I think the booklets are in a group of maybe 50 or 100. I think it's 50. But so you can't just like order one, you got to order 50. So, but that's a good thing. You can have them, it's free, and shipped to you for free, and you can definitely share them and distribute them with other individuals who may need it or be interested. But I will stop there.
Thanks so much, Brian. We've gotten a couple
But
of
I will stop there.
questions.
That was a lot of information, and we can get.
Brian, are you able to hear me? Brian?
Read them, or
Brian, can you
yes.
hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you
Yes,
hear
I can.
me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
We're on the same page.
Yes.
So we've gotten a couple of questions,
Okay.
and first one that came in through our before the program started. In California, we're seeing nonprofits, state agencies, and local governments come together to launch the California Student Debt Challenge. These employers are pledging to provide info to their employees about student loan forgiveness, participate in trainings, and make sure their employees are getting the signatures they need on their forms. Are you seeing this type of coordination and outreach in other states? And are there other ways that employers, nonprofits, and state and local leaders can be useful?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And so, yeah, it sounds like a wonderful program. I will say I haven't heard about it as much in other states, or at least that type of coordination. But I think, and part of the question, so I'll probably jump back and forth a little bit, that employers and government agencies can do to help is so the certification form that has to be complete, and you don't have to complete it essentially. So let's take another step back. And so it's recommended that you complete it at least once each year. And so that's your employer certification form. And so you don't get to a point where it's like 10 years later, you're ready to apply for forgiveness. And then you have to go back and track down different employers, and, a company may be closed, or, different people may be there. And so it may be tough to get the signatures you need, or records may be lost. So one good standard practice is to complete the employer certification form again once a year. And employers can definitely help by, having signing the forms, having those records available, and supporting individuals as they apply for forgiveness. And so I think that was all of the question. If I left out a piece, feel free to let me know.
Thank you. We have another question here. Um, this might be very specific, but let's see if we
Okay.
can do it. My loans were transferred to Mohila. I have been trying to submit my loans for the temporary waiver due October 31st. I have been unable to reach anyone at Mohila to ensure that I am currently completing the process. I have a couple of questions. Is there a separate waiver application? And how do I know if I'm supposed to consolidate my loans?
So the first part, so if your loans are transferred to Mohila, they're essentially your servicer. So any paperwork or anything as far as the limited waiver, it would go to them. And I would say if you're having trouble again, and you don't, and maybe you've submitted it or you're thinking about submitting it, there are instructions to mail it. So you definitely want to submit the application before the 31st, even if it's not completed. You definitely submit it. I'll say that because it's very important. It's like a hard deadline. It's not going to plan to change. So, and then I would say if you're having trouble, it could be any services. So Mohila, any other student loan servicer, getting the result you want, I would definitely say the next step is to contact the Department of Education. And so the Department of Education has like a ombudsman. And so that's the person who manages all their complaints and handles their complaints. And so you could give them a call and essentially let them know, and probably sooner than later again, because 31st, I'll probably keep saying that, is rapidly upon us. And let them know that you've submitted the application for the limited waiver, or you plan to submit it, and you're unable to get confirmation from your servicer that it's been received.
Well, let's hope we find that ombudsman, right, for everybody who has some questions.
Yeah,
Um,
and I will say that it was in the definitely. I think the plan is to share the deck. It was in here somewhere. I think like a
Perfect.
link. Oh, sorry. But you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question here. Biden's new 10 to 20 grand forgiveness plan is to include loans made prior to June, isn't it? Is it possible to consolidate with a loan made from the fall in order to have a higher amount forgiven?
Um, so I think so. The question is asking. No, well, so no. The loans had to be made prior to the end of June. So any new student loans that have happened starting July 1st forward, those wouldn't qualify. And if you, I guess earlier in the presentation, I talked about like the FSA's website, which shows like the breakdown of student loans. And so they have all the information. It's like a all-in-one stop, but essentially it shows loans that were taken out before a certain period of time. And only those loans would actually qualify, if that makes sense. So even if you had maybe $5,000 that was taken out prior to June 30th, and you took out $12,000 and you try to consolidate, it's that additional $12,000 wouldn't be forgiven. I would say that only that $5,000 that was made prior, it qualifies for forgiveness.
All right, thank you for that one, Brian.
No problem.
As another question here, and I know we talked about it earlier, but are Parent Plus loans included for parents for forgiveness in this?
Yes. And so, yes, they are. So Parent Plus loans and all other Department of Education Hell loans, which include Parent Plus loans, Grad Plus loans, and other direct loans. And I will say the federal family education loans that are owned by the Department of Education. So there was a small portion, and I mentioned earlier that are still owned by whatever lender made those loans. Even though they're federal loans, they are kind of like in another category of federal loans. So some were transferred back, some weren't. And the ones that were transferred back to the Department of Education qualify for forgiveness because they're owned by the Department of Education completely.
Okay. Another question here. My loan types are DL Student Plus, DL Stanford Subsidized, and DL Stanford Unsubsidized. Should I consolidate for temporary waiver? Also, I cannot locate one of my employers using the PSLF help tool. How will that impact my waiver app?
Yeah, so I'll answer the last question first. So employers do have to sign it, but the Department of Education has communicated. So even if your employer is not in there, you're not able to find the employer. You still want to submit the application anyway. And there will be a point where additional verification may have to happen. Like you might have to provide some tax returns or W-2s or something to that effect. And I will say, even for myself, there's actually a place that I work for, a federal government agency, that didn't auto-populate in the tool too. So I have seen it. But again, the general consensus is that even if the form is incomplete, you still want to go ahead and submit it, and then you follow up on those extra details later. As far as and I think that's the other question was about different loan types and consolidation. You can, and was it, correct me if I'm, was it towards like seeking public service loan forgiveness? Was that the
It asked about for temporary waiver. So yeah, it should be for the PSLF.
Yeah. So for the temporary waiver, if you consolidate those loans, and again, before the 31st, all of the payments, which for some of the loans, which may have made prior to 2010, and they may not have technically qualified, but for the waiver, those payments that were made for the loans then will count towards public service loan forgiveness. So yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to take advantage of the consolidation. And I think a consolidation application only takes about maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So it's fairly, I'll say quick. I think it's a quick process. Some people might not think 15, 20 minutes is quick, but yeah, and it will preserve those payments that were made on loans that may not have technically qualified prior to the waiver, but will qualify as long as the application submitted on time.
And Brian, for the actual waiver application, it says the deadline's October 31st, but does that deadline mean that it has to be in their office by October 31st or just have a mail stamp of October 31st?
That's a really good question. And I would think so I'll probably go with the second one. So it has to be postmarked and in the mail, but I would say, you want to get it there as quickly as possible. So, so I would, if I mail it in, like, send it in today, call to verify. Those are some good best practices, but yeah.
Thanks so much. And Brian, another question here.
Okay.
What can be done about loans that are in default?
So loans that are in default, and it's actually, there is a rehab program. So that's one option. But and essentially what that allows you to do is that if you have a loan in default, you're able to make payments as low as, I think it's $5 a month, and that may have changed recently, but essentially you make those payments for 9 months, and then the loan is bought back to its, I guess it's bought out of default, so it's no longer has a default status. So yeah, that's one way to handle it. I think the first step is also for federal student loans, again, is to contact your servicer or Department of Education and try it. And of course, if it's already in default, that's one thing. But if you see it's headed there, thinking about maybe some of the options that are available to you before it gets there.
Thanks so much, Brian. As we wrap up and receive some more questions, just giving folks some more time to shoot over their questions using the Q&A function. Follow-up question for you on what can the folks on the line be able to do to help advocate for maybe themselves or for other folks to get them to apply? What other tools should they be looking out for from CFPB to help them with this particular application or filing a complaint or trying to get support with relieving themselves of the student loan debt?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think you can sign up for so I'll speak first about CFPB and then Department of Education. We have a mailing list. And so anytime we have any webinars or anything around student loans and we actually have one, sorry, upcoming that goes through our complaint process and like how to use the complaint tool and you know the power of it, which I like to say, and like what type of results can you see by filing a complaint. And so that's actually coming up. I think it's Thursday, but I'll confirm. But yeah, just staying connected in that way, because there are, again, a lot of webinars, a lot of outreach. And as far as the Department of Education, also sign up for their mailing list. Constant reminders to could be, you know, family members or your audience, whoever you actually work with, to take advantage of these things. Because I think the student loan forgiveness application has received like a broad, wild appeal, or a heightened appeal, essentially, because for one, it's forgiving money, but number two, I think because of the work of advocates reminding individuals to take advantage of it. And so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Brian. We've gotten a couple of questions, and I can answer this one.
Okay.
Will this presentation be
Yeah.
available after today? Yes, we are streaming it live on Facebook, and Dee Dee, our communications manager, will be making sure that it's also available on our other social media so you all can utilize it there. And we will be sharing this particular presentation to those who registered with us. So we'll be able to share all these presentations so that you all can follow through and contact the folks. Brian, is there anything else that you'd like the folks on the line to know?
No, I think yeah, again, thank you all for joining us today. And Jenny, I'll send you the updated version of the deck as soon as we hop off, and that way you can share that one. But yeah, just taking advantage of the tools that are available, because I know it sometimes sounds like filing a complaint is a bad thing, but you definitely want to advocate for yourself. And anytime you feel like you're wrong by a company, or it could be a servicer or wherever it might be, you know, taking that opportunity to you know, fill out the complaint application. I think the process is, and I always say this, but I think it is. It's very user friendly, and we have a good group who, like I said, gets results for our complaint. So, but yeah, just if something's not right with a student loan or anything else, just you know, stepping in there, advocating for yourself, and then those who work with individuals, just letting them know that these resources are available, and that it's you know, people in the government who care deeply about it and want to make sure that their voices are heard, and that, you know, they're not taken advantage of. So that'll be my last public service announcement.
Thank you so much, Brian. We really
Okay.
appreciate just your time and your attention here. Um, and hold on, there was just one more question that came in, and I think
Okay.
everybody would want to know about this.
Okay.
Can you be reimbursed for loans that are paid off?
So yeah, and so federal student loans, and so again, if you've made any payments during this period, and so this has come up a lot, you can request that your servicer return those payments to you, and so and that does include loans that were paid off during this time period. And so, yeah, so that's a question that's actually come up quite a few times. But yes, so just again, the first line, that's who you contact, is the servicer, and let them know that you would like to have whatever payments you have made returned.
Thank you so much. It was an important question, so I had to get it through.
Yeah, no
Brian, we
problem.
want to thank you and your group, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, for everything that you all are doing, not only with student loans, but across the board, and just being a resource to the folks on the line and to us here at SEAP. The Southern Economic Advancement Project is here to support y'all as well. So should you have any questions or queries, please reach out. You can visit us at our website, theseap.org, or continue following us on our social media. We would love to connect with you. We're going to have more conversations, important topics that are affecting you, are affecting our people, and making sure that we're providing you all with as much information and tools as possible for you to share this to all of your community and your network. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the questions. And please make sure to share our Facebook Live when it's on, when we wrap up here, so you all can share it with your community members as well for more questions. And please reach out to us if you need any help or support. Brian, thank you so much to everybody
Thank you.
on the line. We really appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, y'all. I'm going to end the webinar. Dee Dee's going to end the webinar.
See you later.